are you? I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Hi there.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we are discussing Severance Season 2, Episode 1, Hello, Miss Cobel. Before we jump into the video, I just wanted to formally announce that we will be doing a live show after each episode this season. I kept getting comments about it, and after some anxiety that I wouldn't know how to properly have a good Severance live stream, I spoke for 4 hours with hundreds of you about what we all just watched together last episode. It was wonderful. At one point, I had over 100 consecutive viewers, which is an insane number, and I just wanted to thank all of you that showed up, as well as let everybody know that we will continue that. We will continue doing that. After the next episode, expect a little notification about the live stream starting up soon, and then become a frolicaholic with the rest of the community. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name is HaxDogma, and I am just a dude that likes talking about TV shows, and everybody in the comments here has gaslit me into believing that I'm good at it. These videos are deep dives into each episode that focus heavily on theory crafting and trying to understand the deeper elements of any show that I am reviewing. Thank you for being here. Welcome to my channel, and sincerely, I hope you enjoy the intrigue. But without further ado, let us sever our brains once again after years of being boring outies and overthink an Apple TV show about the healthy work-life balance. The episode begins with the first 8 minutes that we've seen already and reviewed. For the sake of a complete product that people can watch without needing a secondary video, we will go over it, but definitely not to the length that we did in the first video. The episode begins with Mark's head inflating like the balloons that Mr. Milchick gives him moments later. This feels like a massive hint about what is really going on with the team being back inside a severed floor. This animation has never been seen before, and while it seemed like it was just a fun way to show Mark coming back to reality after the show was gone for 3 years, this is most certainly telling us that there is a difference between his normal forgetful elevator ride and now. When Mark is fired a few moments later, we see this subtle shake as well appended to the normal focal length camera trick as if to highlight the balloon deflating animation. Mark is acting like a balloon here, and it's no coincidence that they showed a few dozen Mark balloons being walked around these floors before Mark eventually lets them go, resting against the ceiling. I believe this represents the many Marks that could exist either in sequence or simultaneously, all of which are desperately trying to reach through the prison floor ceiling. After he exits the elevator, we see this clock. Briefly, it acts as a halo above his head. Keep clocks and time in your mind this season. When I discuss the painting later, I will share more about why, but I am now certain it is important, either to show they are reliving days like we saw in the movie Groundhog Day, or that Lumon's master plan relates to time, immortality being the most on the nose for me. We get a little montage of him sprinting through the hallways that he should be much more familiar with. In a previous video, I said that this was because he wasn't familiar with the new floor layout, but it does appear to be the same set. We just don't really know. We don't see like a top down. Nobody has said anything about anything being moved around, so he really was just lost for a little bit. He also passes this purple room. This was the room that was once covered in plastic where we saw Helly and Mark talking about mapping. It being bright and vibrant shows us a progression of the building itself. It seems like they are ready to fill that floor with more workers or want to give a stronger illusion of a successful Lumon. While he's running, we do see this little focal length change of the camera like they do in the elevator, and my goodness, I don't even know what this could mean. They use this effect to show innies and outies swapping control, but I don't think we've ever seen this on a horizontal plane. Actually, hold that thought. I wanted to talk about this for some time now, but haven't really found the right time. I'm pretty sure that they show the testing floor here. Like whenever they do this, it has like kind of a different lens with a subtle curve that kind of bends this door here. I've been searching for the importance, but I'm really not sure. Perhaps here they use this effect to tell us that Lumon is messing with the hallways or how any Mark is perceiving them. This was a theory that I suggested some time ago that never really found roots, but it's pretty simple. Since Lumon can affect memories, why couldn't they affect visual perceptions as well? Later, we see the building literally come to life in a fun, super non-creepy at all in any capacity kind of animation.
Operates. Hey, no running in my halls. That tickles.
And we see Mark running through the halls, and the halls viscerally, visually reacting. It's something like, why, right? This change also happens right before he gets to the wellness center that was stripped bare. So it is significant, but I'm not quite sure I understand the intention behind the creative choice. Now, my money is on this man being Mr. Grainer. It doesn't have to be, it could be other people easily. Having a new security guard would make some things new and exciting, as another authority figure will be able to express control over this ticklish building. But death is a big reoccurring theme. None of the Innies know that Audi Mark helped hide his dead body. They were told that Mr. Grainer retired, and while we can't confirm this yet, I don't see anything that would prevent someone from returning from retirement. If this is Mr. Grainer, it would be proof that they are able to create new bodies, and I think that they want to keep us speculating for a little bit longer about that fact. The implications of that would be massive. So, if I was writing the story, I think I would make this Mr. Grainer. But I've also been outside of Dan Erickson's house for like 6 months, and he won't come to the door anymore to hear my thoughts. So take that with a grain of salt.
Eventually, we all have to accept reality.
Mark eventually leaves, making a beeline for MDR, and finds,
I suppose you're Mark S.
His team is gone, the world is ending, and Mark has no idea what is going on.
Would you be open to using a different first name to avoid confusion?
Of course, we know that this team only lasts for a little bit, but these interactions are everything.
Welcome back, Marcus. In a minute.
This is one of my favorite things to say of all time. Something could happen 10 years ago. I could have known you as a childhood friend, and I will say that it's been a minute. And I think that that is the significance of this, instead of saying I missed you or anything else, right? The straightforward is the 5 months that Mr. Milchick really wants Mark to believe in. The twist would be that it is literally a minute, highlighting Mark going through some refinement process here and has been through it multiple times without his or our knowledge.
Where are they?
I think it's best to save any queries till we arrive at the management office.
Mr. Milchick wants Mark to wait to ask questions until they reach his office and focuses on where Mark can leave his bouncing balloons. The foyer being used to mark this room where Mark should leave his other marks might mean nothing, but it could also be another subtle way of saying that the marks should be kept at the entrance or are kept at the entrance.
And I don't want them distracting you. I assure you, they won't be taken.
This is when we meet Miss Wong.
Hello.
And to briefly highlight feelings that I've stated before, this is the most terrifying character of the show. Children in the workplace is already taboo for the child labor purposes, which I wholeheartedly think that we could work more children. All right, that's all I want to say. But my mind can conjure images, and only images, of her with flames behind her carrying out heinous action because she is a child and she knows only how to follow the orders of authority. She is kind of terrifying, but they go into his office and start having a conversation about everything that has happened. Miss Cobel is gone, and they are now international superstars, the face of Severance reform. It is absolute bullspick, and until we get an episode focusing solely on the outside world, I don't think we will really know what is happening with any of this. I'm hoping that episode 2 focuses solely on that, as we were given new Audis to care for in the finale, and I really do want to know how Devin translates "she's alive" to Audi Mark. Notable things to consider: the bonsai plant is a creative choice to highlight how management is tasked with caring for a tiny version of a much larger specimen. I believe the idea that they are not in the same building was something that we discussed before this episode, and the shipping crate here could help prove that they moved his stuff from one office to the other. The painting back here, I got a ton of comments talking about how this could be an iceberg. The big point being that what is happening under the surface of this severed floor is far bigger than what we are seeing. The newspaper here we have already dove into pretty significantly, and my thoughts really have not changed. First and foremost, let's discuss if it is real or not. I know this is a hot topic, lots of different takes here. I'm sorry, CSL, but it's not real. If I was a gambling man, I would wager as much. It's very much another tool for the manipulation of severed workers by management in a playbook that we have yet to see, in the same way that we saw them using the Macrodata refinement calamity in episode 5 that was even numbered as though it were an audible football call.
You ran a 266 on Irving B.
Yeah.
Mr. Milchick is giving them this as a way to show their work is valuable and likely to help explain why they are still down there working. It cannot all be for naught, and assuming it's not possible to wipe their severed brains and start over like it was their first day here, they would need to create some story that makes them once again conform to their subterranean imprisonment without a daily call to arms to dismantle the the people wielding the power. He tells them that on the outside they have done great things, and because of what they have done personally, the world is changing for all severed workers. They are the face of Severance reform. The newspaper here shows us them being carted through the city on a parade with security. It feels so out of place and likely photoshopped. The term innies being used on the front page after it was acknowledged as a pejorative term on national television also makes me think that this is fake. The innies wouldn't know that it was a bad word, and the world wouldn't come out to say thank you. It's again the same grandiose mental that believes their work is that important. The biggest thing that disproves this for me that this is real is this note about Rickon. The benediction was delivered by Dr. Rickon Hale, author of such hits as The UUR and These Values 9, How I Let Kier In. I think this is Lumon reflecting on how this severed floor got so out of hand that it literally staged a coup, and were able to trace that back to Miss Cobel bringing in a stolen contraband item book inside of this severed floor and it getting loose and it affecting everybody. Season 1 was filled with moments of people slipping away and reading this book. They show Mark directly reflecting on this book in moments of uncertainty. I think the people that remained after Miss Cobel was fired understood the damage that this book did or used it as a scapegoat, and need the innies to feel like the book aligns more with the handbook than they first believed and when they first read it. If this book actually exists, I don't think it was written by Rickon, but I think it may be shown in season 2 as an approved book with Rickon's face on it, and they're going to spin it as like the UUR was the first copy that needed to be reworked, right? Like it was kind of radical. I think the whole thing is just another form of manipulation, but they could be allowed to read this new book and it could have a line on the inside that says, the UUR was an immature thing, right? I was in my infancy of being an author, and they could pretend that Rickon was sharing how Kier has helped him see the light of such a period of buffoonery in his life. The newspaper also tells us that this continuing background story of the Baird Creek Bandit is still going on. This has been hidden in the background since the start, and I do want to do a little dedicated short video about it if I have time for season 2, but it's just a mysterious home invader who steals things from the community that Mark lives in while everybody else is at work. It could be anybody that we don't see in the office, but Rickon and Devin seem to be the most likely candidates. Looking at you again, Giant Glass House. The newspaper also mentions the 4 severed workers by name, which if this was a paper from the outside, it wouldn't do because it's not Mark S. on the outside. It talks about them all giving speeches, talks about the board listening to them, about how big of a show it was with like these performers, which is it's just so weird. Mr. Milchick's name, it can also be seen in some like right there after some of the image altering that I did to make this a little more clear, I hope. Top of the line says the recreational facilities, sexual liberation, improved snacks, and the possibility for something that starts with an F, maybe field, like visiting a field, which could relate to the goat thing, though it could also not say field. I don't really know. We can see a scientific researcher, something at Lumon Industries, his research to changing the way we recycle plastic, repurpose plastic, and in a divine moment last week, science found a way to fix our plastic pileup, which does not sound like any paper that would actually exist. Science found a way to fix our plastic pileup. I mean, maybe. I guess I'll give that the benefit of the doubt, but divinity, how does that relate, right? It's just, I don't know. There's no way that this is real. Their work relating to plastic could be a story for the innies to stop questioning all the time what they do now. If they knew the work was them saving the world from microplastics being in every single thing that we consume nowadays, that could make them want to stay and work because they're the heroes. And because of that, they get to be rewarded with the knowledge of their great contributions to humanity. And the reason that it was behind Cloak and Dagger is because, it was still up in the air about what was really happening. We see more stuff about legislation affecting Lumon, which I do believe is a real battle because they are facing the 4 states, to my knowledge, still trying to ban the procedure. Also, the senator being introduced as a person directly benefiting from the company's success speaks largely about how important the political game is for Lumon. We see new technology elevates, gone are the days of plastic bottle to another bottle, something about the composition of plastic molecules. During the process, the polyethylene, something more commonly known as plastic, something more nonsense, I think, but it would be quite amazing if their actual goals did relate to this in some kind of way. Polyethylene is used in knee replacements and other surgeries, and if you were actually trying to make organs or entire bodies out of polyethylene to extend the human lifespan to avoid the real end of life that our human cells currently have, I think that could be cool. It could make sense, but it's just a wild theory to share with your friends and coworkers who did not ask for your theories. Freezer cools the plastic to something Celsius at this temperature, something, unlike the combustion something. This innovation safely separates the elements without releasing any hazardous gases. Some of these words are hard to see. Forgive me if it's not correct at all, but I think that makes the most sense. They are highlighting how this process is different and going into the details for what entirely could be a facade to convince the Innies that they are doing important things. It's a lot of information, is my point here, because I feel like that would be a cool way to hint at the actual going on here, while also hiding it in plain sight for what could be just a facade for the Innies. And we see clearly, episode 1, that the outside world, the story does not exist like this. There was never a newspaper talking about plastics, so why go so in depth about the plastics here unless you were kind of maybe hinting at the grander scale of things without giving too much away? This feels like something for the audience to speculate about, or just to know the name polyethylene for some kind of reason. The other big thing that happens in the sequence is Miss Cobel is getting scapegoated hard.
I believe she developed an erotic fixation on you, both you and your outie, in what might be termed a throuple.
I fundamentally disagree with Miss Cobel being anything other than a loyal to a fault fanboy of Kier and Lumon, and I think we would be foolish to forget that she was really the face of the company in season 1 in many regards. They could pivot to that being Mr. Milchick, but his immense benefit at the demise of someone that we know is intimately loyal to this company piques my interest greatly.
You still haven't told me where my team is.
They discuss how Mark wanted to come back into this place right away, and I do have some trouble believing that. I really think something is happening with time in this season, and Mr. Milchick is not being honest on many fronts. The only thing that really comes to mind as to why Outie Mark would return is that the organization that helped PD reintegrate is now betting on Mark for some big things. Other comments have said that it is in relation to Gemma, but I really can't see Outie Mark believing that Gemma is alive and then returning to work because of that. Like, he would still never know. He would never be able to perceive that himself and be unable to do anything at all, unless he believes that it is enough for his Innie to have his time with her, even if it means that he can't. And that is kind of beautiful. Truly, that might be it. That's pretty sweet. Mark gets a little combative here, which we love to see, insisting that he wants to hear this from them, but Mr. Milchick shuts it down. It's not possible, and that is that.
Enjoy your balloons.
Mark then leaves the Mark balloons on the ceiling for the reasons that I talked about before, and we return to MDR.
Speaking of which, how much do we see of that Mr. Milkshake?
Where I can find some Inca pencil.
These two immediately start asking questions and making him feel like a valued leader of this branch, mistakenly calling Mr. Milchick Mr. Milkshake, which is a great name that will probably be memed forever, but I can't believe I can't believe in any of this, to be honest. It feels like it's being done solely to make Mark feel good for knowing things, to make him the authority of this room because they know how important that is, as a little tiny talking box is the ultimate power here.
Did you really see the outer world? How's the sky?
I don't know.
All of this questioning is wild to me. It is so on the nose that this is Lumon wanting more information about what Mark did on the outside that it makes me believe otherwise. I mean, not truly. I do believe that Lumon's doing that, but it is pretty apparent that Lumon is doing that.
Brothers-in-law weren't even on the list. Oh my God, how's wind? Is it just like getting breathed on, kind of?
This line was just so funny to me. And then, of course, we come to the ball game. Miss Wong starts with this.
For this, I was a crossing guard.
Which is just so curious to me. The child had another job before this one, the job commonly reserved for the elderly. Something about this is off. Was it a Lumon floor that she was a crossing guard for? Do they have that? Was she severed? Does the real world just allow child crossing guards and I don't know it? That could be a thing. I don't know. I don't contemplate crossing guards that much.
Why are you a child?
Because of when I was born.
This feels like a non-answer, to be honest, but the fact that it's coming from the elder feels intentional as well. In the stream after show, we talked about how this could be Miss Cobel inside of a new body, but I'm hesitant to lean into those theories for a few reasons. Most importantly, we don't know if they can actually do anything resembling that yet. Mark W. thought that he was going to be retired when his branch shut down, but it turns out that his Audi was able to make the move to this new site. I guess the other possibility is that he arrived in a little shipping container like this and just doesn't know it.
I'm Mark S. I am lucky enough to have made 4 new friends today.
I have to remind you that I'm a supervisor, not a friend.
This moment is one of my favorites. Like, truly, she reminds him that they are not friends, and this look in his eyes is the most villainous thing we have ever seen from Mark.
3 new friends.
He looks like he's about to kill a little girl. Later in this episode, we will talk about Helly and how the show does a great job of highlighting how it might not be the real Helly, but this behavior from Mark is only being looked over because we know that he is a rat in a cage right now and feeling like one, but this isn't Mark S. behavior that we are familiar with. We then see this old head cube and he turns his computer off with decent efficiency, a point that will come into play later, and he leaves for the day. We see the normal changing of the guard and another day back in heaven or hell.
What's your perpetuity wing like? Do the Eagans move?
In this moment, they're describing the differences between newer and older Lumon branches, and I think they're really highlighting some fun timeline play here. Mark is in the middle with of whatever the timeline is, with these pretty standard carved statues. These two have Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics, which could happen in Mark's timeline, I think, but also keep in mind the old cars and tech could be showing us that Mark's timeline is a little bit older than we are led to believe. Then, finally, this man had brooms with plates.
Did you have an elevator?
We had, how do you say, a rope.
I audibly laughed when they said this, and then I got to thinking about what they're really saying. This Italian man, assumingly from Italy, worked at a branch where they honored the Eagans in the same capacity that Mark's branch did, with brooms and paper faceplates. It's impossible. We know that Lumon was having issues launching in the United States, and like by the time the technology advanced to spread across the world, they still only had the ability to have brooms and paper plates. It just doesn't make sense. The company had its sights on the world, but it was very clear that they were struggling to gain traction domestically. My thought is that the different levels of technology across these 3 branches shows us how these other workers aren't only from geographical locations, but they are also from different locations on the timeline. Because of how the logical switch works, Mark here could have been cryo-frozen and brought back to life 1,000 years in the future, and he would just believe that it was the next day or 5 months, like he believes Mr. Milchick when he is told that in this episode. Perhaps when they close branches, they go to something of a cold storage, which is a concept that I will talk about at the end of the video when I pull everything together. But essentially, maybe they go to that cold storage until it is time for them to work again, explaining why he believed that he was going to be retired and then suddenly came back to life, where there is a Eagan perpetuity wing that has a lesser advanced technology tree. We see Mark writing this letter, and right before he leaves, we hear this from Mark W.
You know, my old team was a bunch of dirtbags. We never hit quota. Not once.
This begs me to believe that Lumon knew what Mark was doing while he was doing it and intended to further test him, to see if he would value the lives of these people like he values his own and his team. Mark W. gives a sob story about how great it would be to finally work on a winning team with people that care, and then Mark goes and shows that he does not care.
Please consider strapping a bomb to me so that I may explode both Milkshake and the very spirit of Kier Eagan.
Again, I laughed so hard here. Mark S., who only started raging against the machine in the last few days of his conceptual life, is framing coworkers and telling Audis to kill themselves. This is 1 week of League of Legends gameplay expedited immensely, and the way he looks between Mr. Milkshake and Mark W. had me going. It felt like he was a child telling his first lie, and he had no idea that everybody in the room already knew the truth, and they were basically just waiting for him to confess. It was great.
Wait, you think I wrote this note?
Eventually, the truth comes out, and Mark starts demanding his team back. He gets in Mr. Milkshake's face, and he gets his status revoked.
You will be relegated to the office and must check in regularly as to your progress.
What happens next is interesting. So when they say that he was relegated to the office and must check in regularly, I don't think we know what that means. But I think that we should pay attention to it. The office feels like this place, but it could also be upstairs in the building above. Having to check in regularly could mean once a day, a week, or 6 months. They have no frame of reference for time, and I wonder if the office is something more than what we see here. Perhaps the implication here is that they're saying, you're going to be working this job, and we're going to have you come in regularly until we can assure that you conform to your working conditions again. And if not, you will continue to be relegated to the office until you are. There's no escaping it. You're just going to check in until you are.
Do you even have a brother-in-law, asshole?
Then, the weirdest, creepiest, scariest version of Mark S. that we have ever seen.
You don't know what I did to the kitchenette yet, do you?
And again, where is this coming from? Is it simply that he has a full understanding that he's the mouse in a boiling pot of milk and the claws are coming out? Or is this new behavior that indicates a fundamental difference or uncharacteristic change or action in Mark? After Mark gets to the management office, he pulls out the speaker and starts begging for help.
Mark S. from Macrodata Refinement. I know that you want to do the right thing for severed people, which is why I need to see my team again.
Of course, nobody answers, and for all we know, his cries for help fall on deaf ears. Depending on which theories you subscribe to for who or what the board is, this message could have been received by the collective hive mind circuit board, or nobody at all, as this could be the illusion of authority meant to keep people in line. It is entirely your call.
My Innie just wants his co-workers back so we can serve Kier together.
This is when Mark asks if he is fired, the elevator door closes, and again, this animation is 100% on purpose. Look at the ring around Mr. Milkshake's head. The final moment is also a ring. The clocks, the toy that we see Miss Wong play with later, all telling us some cyclical fiction is happening here. Halos, of course, also represent divinity. Kier is God here, and the people acting on behalf of Kier do so with divine protection. I do believe that Mark was fired here, or something major happened. This is the end of this version of Mark S., and I fully believe that something major happens between this point and whenever we see him again. We don't know the length of time between this and the next time he comes down here. 10 years could have passed while they do something like, I don't know, creating the perfect torture chamber for Mark and his friends like Miss Cobel talked about.
Your friends are gonna suffer. Mark will suffer. He'll be long gone. Keep them alive.
If the entire season is them trying to escape some Sisyphusian maze where the entire goal is to torture them, I wouldn't be that surprised. It's kind of a fire plot point when you consider the super powerful company just had a secret organization buck at them, and they could want to express that power right back if they believe the Innies are intimately responsible for this organization. I do believe that the work is maybe the most important thing in the entire company, like maybe more than we even consider right now. I think that the company needs them working in MDR, because by the end of this, they are back at work. But perhaps between lights out and lights back on, a bunch happened. Maybe every time somebody quits, or like 100 iterations of Mark going through this, or rebellion continued after they let the timeline play out over and over again until management had these circumstances in which they would stay and be productive at work. And here we are.
Dylan! Mark!
They talk about Dylan getting tackled and losing his belt in the process. We don't exactly know what happens right after he is tackled, but it seems like he was just escorted to the elevator and then popped back here. I think that there is nothing wrong with that. I think that that is a valid course of events, though it's not explicitly stated even that. But I do think that if the showrunners are hiding stuff behind Dylan being the comedic relief, this would be a really interesting way to do that. Like, we just take what he says at face value and we keep going because, he's upset about his belt, which is a very Dylan thing to be upset about.
Kier pardons his betrayers?
Let's dive into this. I see 5 major parts here. The workers buried up to their necks, Kier with a halo around his head with a soft hand on one of the workers, a dark power looming in the shadows, standing at the ready, a factory with a pillar of light, which I believe is coming from the factory instead of going to it from above, and the 5th thing being the source of light on the wall here. I want to start with the light. To me, it represents the sun or some kind of holy power. It's divine in nature and hanging over their heads as if they were plants, and the sun was calling them to grow from the soil. Kier, the kind gardener that needs to be sure that they produce fruit and holding a blade to cut any weeds that conspire against the yield. I believe this is Dylan, Helly, Irving, and Mark. I think the light around his head mirrors old Renaissance paintings doing the same, where they would show that this character is an angel or God or Jesus himself. I think this speaks to how Lumon and the Eagan family views themselves and their intentions more than anything. I think the factory in the background is Lumon Industries, and the style is meant to make it look like an older factory in order to remind us of the ether factory that started all of this. The light is the ideology, and I believe the light is coming from the factory because they are trying to emulate the divine lights or thoughts or philosophy from above. They believe that what they are doing is larger than life, akin to the creation of man itself, and they are acting as the beacon to guide people on the path of righteousness. No degree of hubris left on any table. Another way I want to consider this is that the sun is not actually the sun, but a clock. The center framing away from everything else mirrors the way that we see clocks on the severed floor. Of course, this could be nothing, or it could hint at exactly how their master plan will unfold. Going back to the Perpetuity Wing, we see these quotes here about the remembered man. In my episode breakdown, I talk about the scene in length, but here I just want to highlight that immortality could be a large part of that plan, or remembering the history, or bringing back, people from the dead kind of thing, or existing in a new way that we don't currently think of, that also escapes our fated time on Earth. The soldiers in the background could be showing us that Lumon is ready to fight should the world need another great war. I think it's meant to misdirect us because they are already buried underneath of the Lumon building. That's why I view this as Kier being the ideological gardener above everything else. I don't think it's about the punishment at all, really. He's not forcefully bending this person's head down for execution. He's making sure that he is pointed in the right direction, like all of them looking directly at Kier. I don't really have more to add other than that. I am kind of leaning toward the work being so important that Lumon had to create an environment where they would continue working above everything else, but Miss Cobel's final notes also still rings in my ears. The title of the painting means that they want the workers to know that they are pardoned, and it is up to us to decide if they are or not. This moment was spectacular and the greatest of these switchovers. This man was banging on the door with everything that he had, his love on the other side. He switched off and then came back to banging on the doors of the prison that he just escaped. My goodness.
Dude, are you okay?
Such a nightmare. He is feeling the effects of that terror intimately.
Dude, what's wrong? You poor up there?
I laughed so hard. This is great. Like, imagine you work this terrible job, subject another version of you to a life within these walls who will never know wind nor sky, and then you're poor. I mean, it's not explicitly stated, and living in an apartment does not inherently mean that you are poor, but we do see some wealth disparity on the top side. Bert has a single family home, Mark lives in a duplex, and Irving lives in an apartment. If being poor is the person with the least amount of space for fun activities, then yeah, Irving is poor. This is when we get Helly or Helena. Who knows? Some mysteries are left unsaid. But maybe I'll just make a bunch of notes about it until the end of this video, and then you can decide for yourself if it is Helly or Helena.
Oh my God, are you okay?
This moment was done so well because I really wanted Helly to show up. The showrunners got me. They knew that I wanted Helly to show up. The tension was real. This little pause was perfect because the second he turns away, I was like, no, like, wait for her. And then, of course... Now, think about what you just saw. Irving was banging on the door because he was standing there still banging on the door. You're telling me that this woman was in motion when the switch flipped, and right before the doors opened, she came back to and started running full sprint? I don't think that's how this works. It's not how we just saw it work. We hear Irving beating on the elevator before they open because you switch before the door opens. The idea that she was running because she was dang near tackled off the stage by Natalie is ridiculous. She had a cognitive moment, if this was Helly, while she saw the elevator doors like we see every single time, and then she decided to run out in a panic to make it seem that it is her being in that motion still, but there's just no way that it is.
Did you wake up?
Yeah.
How long has it been? Where's everybody else?
They then traverse to MDR and find Irving needing some time in the storage closet. A terrible moan tells Mark that he just needs more time, and then they discuss what happened.
Okay, so what is going on? We're not in trouble?
I don't think so. I mean, Milchick said our message got out. He said we're famous.
They have a brief discussion about what happened, Mark getting fired a moment ago, or thinking that he did, and then Dylan wants the details, but Mark is hesitant, and rightfully so.
Waiting for us to tell each other what happened because they don't know what happened. I mean, what if they're listening, Dylan?
Oh, look, guys, all the cameras are gone. We're probably not being watched anymore. It's probably safe to tell each other all the little dirty details and fun little secrets. Ooh. This is one of the biggest things pointing to this being Helena. It feels like she is trying to create the conditions for her team to open up before they are actually safe to do so. In fact, a lot of things happen like this, and it makes me really think that Lumon is trying to get more information from them, maybe even some of the stuff that we don't know about, like Ragabi and what Petey was doing before the season started and how he was here unsevered for a little bit of time. But these four were not connected to Ragabi or Petey's plans before this that we know of. And the key card from Mr. Grainer could be something that they want to explore, but it was Audi Mark's thing, not any Mark, right? So what exactly does Helena want them to talk about in these moments, assuming this is Helena? Irving eventually comes out, and in walks Miss Wong.
Mr. Milchick's waiting for you in the break room.
The way Dylan looks around is so good. Is anybody else seeing this? Only me? Is that a child in the workplace? Do I need to address this? The break room being announced as a group trip without the reveal that it is actually going to be a nice thing, assumingly nice thing, was also great because it's like, ooh, is it time for like all of us to actually get our whippings, you know?
So they replaced us?
Helly again starting with the questions, trying to get the information flowing, and then Dylan says this.
Okay, well, I don't think you should feel bad at all.
Feel bad?
Yeah, for ending their lives. Fuck them.
This caught me so off guard because it's such a Dylan thing to say, but we don't know that they were fired. They could have been moved. They could have been sent to a different floor or up above or just work nights. I don't know anything, right? To make Mark suddenly consider himself a murderer without like that being something that was even on the audience's periphery. It's just wild. It's hilarious, but like, dang, man.
No, dude, I'm saying don't feel bad. Like, I'm sure they deserved it.
This is when we see the new break room for the first time. It is a tense moment as we wait to find out if they are truly pardoned or not. But the door opens and we see this bright, like calmer space, a bright shining smile from Mr. Milchick once again, who just embodies this creepy Smile. I wish he was in Smile 2. I hope Smile 3 comes out and it's just Mr. Milchick for 3 hours.
Macrodata refinement. Welcome back.
Mark and Mr. Milchick have a brief comment about the board reconsidering his terms, and in the background we can see Lumon is listening. We see this a few times, and it's meant to highlight how much they care now and are willing to make life better for the Innies, but really it just further feeds into the surveillance tension at hand. What can they possibly do, say, or plan with Lumon constantly watching their every move? This was already suspected in Season 1, and after the finale, and when we saw that they were truly watching from every angle and recording audio that they could use even in these animations, it's pretty much a given. It seems like it would be good for the show to establish an area or some kind of way in which they could truly have a bit of privacy. And I think the show leans into this heavily in this first episode, but it's really up to you if you believe that they are able to have private moments or not. In the background, we also see I'm a Frolicaholic and Be Ever Merry. I have this Lumon hive mind thought in the back of my mind that keeps popping up ever since the comment about the board being a circuit board or some kind of unified intelligence, and I think this beehive is an interesting choice. We see these Lumon logos being filled with white stuff by Kier, the queen bee, kind of like, actually, also, now that I'm looking at this image up close, the Lumon logo itself looks like a balloon. I'm not sure the significance, but maybe... I'm sure that is intended. Each refiner, maybe, or each mark here being their own little balloon, being filled with Kier Eagan's white stuff or philosophy. It's going back to the Frolicaholic poster. It is meant to be funny, but it's also telling us that these are the people that have indulged in frolic, right? Like one of the four tempers is out of proportion. It's showing them drinking, and the connection is alcoholism for obvious reasons. It's not a good poster for a world of people that have tamed their tempers. It's poking fun, saying that I am abusing the frolic. I think that's why all of these things that they get as rewards are low-key just weird punishments. We see this Grin and Baird It poster. Baird is one of the former CEOs of Lumon. It's also just saying grin and bear it, like take the punishment with a smile or work with a smile, you ungrateful little innies.
Oh, hi, I'm the Lumon Administrative Building, Branch 501.
First off, that is Keanu Reeves, which is just amazing. Secondly, Lab 501 feels super important, and I'm going to be looking for those numbers and letters in any combo I can find. 501 is also a lot of branches. It doesn't necessarily mean 500 other branches exist, but it does feel like it implies that, right? They show us this little montage of the Lumon building over the years. It acts to ground us in reality of the outside world that they want the Innies and audience to know, and from what we know right now, it does align mostly. I tried to search each of these images for reoccurring characters or anything that felt like it could be purposefully placed to highlight something deeper with the conception of the building itself or how it evolved over the years, but it doesn't seem like anything was really hidden there in this part of the animation. The building gets bigger, the pond stays where it is, and now the building is one giant Tau 9000. Okay, maybe not the last part, but personifying buildings with goofy animations so that they can hide the fact that the building is actually alive is genius. I'm unsure if that's happening, but it could be.
That tickles.
This animation tells us that Lumon was sired in 1870. This did lead me to a little rabbit hole, though. The word sire being used just feels so antiquated, and I wanted to know why. So 1865 is when the Civil War ended, but 1870 is when Robert E. Lee died. Since Lumon has effectively recreated slavery with extra steps, I have a hard time believing that Lumon's start didn't have something to do with the end of slavery now. Entirely off topic here, but Lumon here says that it was sired in 1870, and I just feel like that is so weird.
But one thing I've always had is a love for my workers, both unsevered and severed.
Change that to both enslaved and not enslaved, and it is much easier to imagine them having a hand in post-13th Amendment slave trade. Also, we don't know this either, but for the life of me, I can't shake the fact that Kier PE is somewhere in the Northeast. Also, someone pointed out that it's probably PE, probably stands for the Providence of Eagan, which I totally think it could be. If it is in the Northeast after slavery started, it seems like they could have covertly started slaving for the wealthy elite of the world under the nose of the Union, which is kind of a goated story. They then say that Lumon operates in 206 countries. I'm finding this hard to believe, and the animation of the planet here makes me wonder if they are showing us major changes to the planet, or 206 countries is actively like showing us or telling us that a significant amount of time has changed between the point where we see Audi Mark watching the broadcast where internal states of the United States are still debating if severance should be allowed, to the point in which it is completely taken over the entire world. This could be a great way to subtly show a time jump. I also think that it could be highlighting, this planet here could be highlighting a flood, like a fundamental change to the mass of the world. This area could have been flooded by global warming, or it could just be a simple animation of the world, and it's not that serious. The UN recognizes 193 countries right now, but the Olympics recognize 206 independent nations that can compete, I believe. The body has 206 bones. That's something that I've also seen circulating the interwebs. I think really it just shows that the outside world is not what it appears, or not our understanding, and so we should question this information intimately.
Inspired to mount what Lumon historians will forever call the Macrodata uprising.
Lumon historians feels so ominous. Since the scope is the world and we are being told that they are already covering the planet, should their plan go according to plan, it likely won't be American or sovereign historians. It will be Lumon controlling the narrative of history and sharing that with the world, and just erasing everything else.
Under my literal nose.
Okay, hear me out. He doesn't have a literal nose. That's all I want to say.
Why are we down here?
We see Felicia here, but if you're telling me that this is Christopher Walken, I'm telling you that we live in different universes.
And love.
It highlights the lovebirds here inside of the Lumon logo among all of the hearts here to equate the two. Lumon goes on to show the benefits of the Macrodata uprising, or I'm sorry, the Macrodata uprising, Snacks 2.0 being the first. It has a milk carton, it has Christmas mints, it has a juice box, what I believe is a can of tuna. So yeah, pretty great perks. Plus, Christmas mints make you shake like you took the biggest line of your life. The bobbing for pineapples with their hands bound behind their backs, it's torture more than anything else, right? Like, I don't think that the Innies would know this. They might not have ever seen a pineapple. The mirror room, I mean, what's the perk here? You get to see other distorted versions of yourself to highlight you being trapped in different forms, no real identity. The final image here makes Irving look like a rat with extra eyes, and I have no clue what this means. Kier flies out behind the Lumon building, and we see the water tower also talking. I fully believe this water tower is important. As I write this, I don't really know why, but I've died on dumber hills, so here we are.
They made quite a splash.
The video ends with Lumon thanking Kier for the Macrodata uprising, all meant to show that this was part of his holy plan, and they are truly pardoned because, like Mr. Milchick says, we must be cut to heal. And again, I really think the work might be the most important thing in this building, and they need to get back to work.
And I don't want to be your jailer.
This feels so sincere. The work might really be that important that they cannot focus on the punishment. Mr. Milchick was tasked with getting the branch back up and running, and we're seeing his attempt to do so. They have the ability to choose what happens to them for the first time ever. They will not get punished if they decide that they do not want to continue the work. They can simply leave, they can stop existing, and the Audi will not be able to return to Lumon. It is entirely up to you if you decide to believe that, but I think that there is some truth here.
What the hell was that?
Massive ass head game is what that was.
And I agree. On my first watch, I was kind of turned around about what was true, what was meta, what was so meta that it wasn't meta anymore. We aren't meant to know. They want us to believe that we understand one thing so that they can blow it up later to great effect. And the things that we are very certain of are maybe the things that we should not be so certain of.
He said there were no microphones in here.
Yeah, he says a lot of shit, so just fucking whisper it.
Dylan checks Helly here, like for real. She was far too quick to trust that they don't have microphones everywhere, and that most certainly is because she is not familiar with being surveilled in the same way that they are.
I was at a party at my sister's house for Rickon
Hale.
If the sequence we got before with the other team did anything at all, it focused on how weird it was that Mark talked to his brother-in-law instead of seeing the sky.
Brothers-in-law weren't even on the list.
The newspaper showed Rick and Hale as the author of the new Kier-themed book, and I really have to believe that sharing of information is why the next time he comes back to this place, after an unknown amount of time later, the newspaper mentions his brother-in-law writing the Kier-themed book. I think I talked about this before, but I fully believe that they have to truly do some reflection and maybe have understood that one of the reasons that the uprising happened is because of this book being so readily available for people to read in private moments. And I think that they will try to combat his influence over this space by releasing this other book. I hope that we do actually see this book, because we know that Innie Mark had some amount of time watching him speak and actively being influenced enough to truly tell, another man how much his words mean to him. And I think that Mark would be able to differentiate between the fake words that are coming from Rick and Hale and the man that he met that night. And I feel like that would be a really cool dynamic, as eventually Mark is going to have to see through the facade of some of these things.
My Audie's wife died a few years ago. The woman in the photo was Miss Casey.
The bomb gets dropped and nobody knows how to react. Eventually, the silence is broken with this.
Oh my God. Mark, are you okay?
And I swear on my life, her delivery feels so off. It's like, oh yeah, are you okay, Mark? Are you affected by your Audie's wife dying? Are you gonna cry, little Innie?
What about you? What did you see?
Now, this moment was incredible. My first watch, I fully understood that Helly did not want to tell her team that she was the daughter of the current CEO, and the next in line, Eagan, that is truly the reason that all of them are down there. It felt natural that she was afraid and wanted to hide this from her coworkers because it was easier than whatever the truth actually was. But I don't think that that is what Helly R would actually do. She was the rebel of season 1, the spark that most wanted to burn this place to the ground. And I really feel like her friends here would understand that she is not that person. Like she's not meant to pay for the sins of her parents nor the sins of her Audi, and she could tell them what they need to know.
Yeah.
This is what did it for me. This is what convinced me. If you watch the live stream, you will be able to see the exact moment where Helena becomes Helena for me, and it was here. Like, look at this. Look at this. Look. If I can be so real for a second, this look kind of upset me because my ex used to do this kind of jokingly, and it took me back to the dark ages for a moment. It is pure venom. It's evil. Helly would never.
What about you?
This is when Irving starts talking about killing himself. It's not ever stated that plainly, but the tone shifts in this moment. He fidgets like a man with a secret and a concrete tongue. This pained me. In fact, Irving's plot this episode got the most emotion out of me. He is devastated about losing Bert. He is ripped to shreds because his man is happy without him.
It's not our world up there.
Dylan and Helly both offer Irving a kind word to assure him, wanting him to open up more about what he saw. As I said before, I don't fully understand what Helly is looking for or what he could reveal, but Dylan is also a factor in pushing him to share in the moment where we don't know if he is safe or not. And as much as I want to trust Dylan, I don't trust anybody right now. I don't even trust myself to give good insight into this episode because I feel so ungrounded after this premiere. It feels like anything goes, and it was kind of perfect. He eventually does leave. He gets stopped by Dylan right before he is about to exit the door forever. Before we see that private moment between these two, we see the lovebirds yet again.
Did you guys look happy in the wedding photo?
This entire encounter was awkward. On my first watch, it felt like they were trying to highlight how there could be some jealousy between these two over Miss Casey and Mark's relationship. But after it was pointed out that this is likely Helena, it just feels like she doesn't quite care and wants to do the least amount of work to get him to open up. It's like she can hardly be bothered to make a positive relationship here because she's so sickened at the idea of loving another Innie or loving an Innie as an Audi. It's just, I don't know. The scene has a lot of depth, and I feel like once things are revealed, we'll go back and watch this and be like, oh yeah, she is disgusted here.
So what are you gonna do?
Then again, right back to the questioning.
I gotta get her out of here, right? I mean, if she's my wife,
Right, of course.
This look tells me everything. She got what she wanted. The illusion worked. He intends to rescue Miss Casey.
Pretty sure you're out. You bought the ring.
Ellie.
We're not the same, actually.
Helly is being uncharacteristically cold about Miss Casey being different from Gemma, and it makes me wonder if Mark is suspecting Helly as well. If this is Helly, we know that she is being cold because she has some reservations about who she is on the outside and wants to differentiate between herself and someone who is pure evil. But if Mark is suspecting Helly because of this cold nature toward innies and outies being the same person, I think this could be some 4D chess if he is actually telling her lies here because, well, he hasn't let his guard down. He knows that this could all be a part of the illusion, and I feel like that would be such a great way to show that he really is the star of the show, and it is all about him, and he is paying attention even if we believe that he is not, or believe that he is fooled. I'm really hoping that that is the case, to be honest. It feels like the more fun story is that this little ruse by Lumon isn't actually working, and Mark is already ahead of the game in some capacity.
I failed at the objective.
They talk about him seeking out Bert instead of the nearest person banging on their door instead.
Okay, did you see him? He's married.
Irving explains that Bert was with another lover and how Irving was spying through their window in the middle of the cold, dark night.
I should be happy he's happy. But, seems like you're probably not.
Ignorance is bliss. It might not always be right or good, but the sweet escape from the horrors that come with knowledge is real. When his entire life was solely focused on serving a higher purpose, he was happy, and now he will never be able to return to that bliss.
The last time I was happy was when all I knew was MDR. I'm not trying to be happy.
The emotions peak as it's clear Irving wants to die. His heart is broken and he is on that ledge, a single buddy holding his hand so that he doesn't slip off.
You're a good friend, Dylan.
This moment was so good. It was beautiful. They hug for a terribly long time, twice. It is a great amount of man-on-man action in a platonic way, and we love. Men need more of this. If these two were women, we wouldn't even be talking about it. They show Dylan looking around like he's trying to figure out if it's okay for two men to touch their faces together in a moment where both of them need comfort more than anything else in the world. Normalize this.
Fuck, there's easels up there.
Irving then talks about the testing floor elevator, leaving this as a final note before making a dash out of the door. Neither know the significance, but if Dylan is also a spy, it means the first episode had Mark reveal his pursuit for Miss Casey and Irving reveal his pursuit for this fabled location. Irving being a point that they could want to know more information about because Irving was collecting data about all the severed workers. There could be a real storyline here as he was collecting data for either the organization that PD got involved with or any number of reasons. Could be military, it could be the US government, it could be anything, truly. There are far fewer pieces of evidence in this episode to show that Dylan is actually a spy compared to Helly, and I do think it would make more sense if Helly was the sole spy, as Dylan also has a private moment where we see with Mr. Milkshake later on that would kind of just be deceptive if after the fact it was showing that he was a spy the whole time, right?
Look, I'm sorry that Audi Bert has a hot husband or whatever, but he is not the point.
Continue to talk about the immense pain and Irving wanting to escape from it, how both of them being dead would somehow bring them back together. It is metaphorical, of course, by a delusional, heartbroken man looking for any kind of relief, but
if he's gone and I'm gone, stop saying that, then somehow we'll be together.
Really sounds like it might be a cool way to highlight that Bert does still exist somewhere, and dying might actually have him waking up there too. I'm calling this place cold storage, which is an unofficial term I picked up during the live stream. I will be using it to describe where Bert and the other dead people that Lumon plays with could be stored at, either from other branches or some kind of big repository of severed workers and bodies that are able to be put at different branches or locations should that exist at all. It could also just be what the testing floor is, but I feel like that has more depth than just the storage of bodies. Mr. Grainer could have been in cold storage as well. PD, Gemma, all of them. Hell, we don't even know that it exists yet, but this line feels important to me. Dylan opens up, literally trembling that his friend is about to end it all over a boy who doesn't even remember his name. It is such a kind but intense moment.
Find me a favorite perk.
touching. It's so real. I love this scene.
Mr. Milchick would like to see you.
The Shining Girl then takes him away, and we see Miss Cobel.
I know, but they said it would be corrected by now.
You're telling me 5 months have gone by without an update to the Active Directory record or screensaver text? Get out of here. It shows the company in a weaker, less competent light, and I think that that is interesting and intended. It also seems to be torturing Mr. Milchick, which is also interesting to me. If my theories about Mr. Milchick are correct, and he did have some part in the Macrodata uprising, far more than we are shown in season 1, Helena could be here looking for involvement or information about that as well. I just love the idea that Mr. Milchick is also being tortured here. He will go through believing that he is just, the administrator and having to do these things and having to make people follow him and listen to him when they don't want to. And that in and of itself is such a torture. Oh, there's some cool dynamic here.
You wanted to see me?
Dylan immediately asks about his belt, still shaken up about the loss of such a treasured trouser tightener, but Mr. Milchick disarms him completely.
Your wife's name is Gretchen.
We talked last season about why they made this child sit in front of a TV and count to 1,000 if Dylan had a wife at home to watch him, and how it probably highlights that he doesn't. Here they are telling us plainly that he does. We also heard last season that Dylan has 2 other children, and I will die on the hill that says he most certainly does not. I don't really have strong convictions here. I just like saying that I'll die on hills. Also, we do talk about some stuff later that gets kind of crazy with this. I believe that we are seeing Mr. Milchick lying, and Gretchen is not someone that I believe exists in the outside world.
Are you saying I could see my family here?
If you take the name of the room at face value, I'd say yes.
Just say yes. Like, what mind frickery am I dealing with here? Something really neat about this is I believe that we've already seen this room before. I think that this is the old security office, but I'm not quite sure on that just yet. The text at the bottom reads what I have on screen here. Not much depth to add to anything. It just seems like they want the Innies to believe that this is a way for them to see their families. Such a sweet thought until you remember that they don't view them as people. The Innies don't have family. The Audi is a person. The Innie is a dog. The Innie is a slave. This is a busy bone with no peanut butter in the middle, and my dog Morty is upset with that analogy. I don't believe that he has 2 other children, nor a wife. I fully believe that this is meant to make Dylan keep a secret because everybody knows that he is an incentive-driven worker, and for some reason he's going to believe that they don't have families. Mr. Milchick is earnest when asking him to keep this private in a way that he wasn't before with the overtime contingency protocol. Also keep in mind the original wellness center, where they were incentivized or given like this little, reprieve by learning information about their outside selves without any frame of reference if it was true or not. Will the families that are supposedly coming here know what they can and cannot say? It feels like any amount of information could lead to some discernment of the outside world, and then that could spread across the severed floors, which would ultimately defeat the purpose entirely. I don't believe that this will be anything that they are actually telling us for a ton of reasons.
As such, I'm asking that you keep this between us, or only to avoid resentment.
I'm curious if Dylan will keep this private. I hope that he doesn't, but something tells me that he might for a little while. Irving did just have his heart broken because he believes that he is forever alone on the outside as well. Dylan might consider that when weighing if it would further break their hearts to not have anybody who would come visit. On the flip side of that coin, however, thank you, Morty, if Dylan tells Irving might demand that Bert be his visitor. It could be hard to convince a man that doesn't even know you exist to come emotionally cheat on your husband for a little bit. But there is something interesting about that dynamic should Irving learn that it is possible to meet Audis. It would also be really interesting if this is how they start suspecting that the Audis that they are seeing are not like the true people that they know, as Irving probably has a pretty good understanding of who Bert is now, and what they would be doing is approximating Bert as they show Irving this person. Again, I'm like a few theories down the line, theories on top of theories, but if those things are true, that would be a great way to do this. We then see Miss Wong playing this game. It looks like busy work, but also much more fun than binning scary numbers all day long. We see an analog clock on her arm, which is only important because it wants you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Dylan leaves, and we see Mr. Milchick stare directly at her while shutting the door. It feels so aggressive toward his his pupil for the reasons that I talked about before. The toy is interesting. Them focusing on the text that haunts him is also interesting. I don't know what the show hopes to focus here, aside from maybe Miss Cobel being in a new body, which we hardly have evidence for. The toy itself features these rings, which we see a dozen times throughout this episode. It is time, it's cyclical, it's about landing the halo on Kier, but this feels like something which will have much more depth the second the rings and their purpose is revealed plainly without a paragraph of text to, theorycraft about what this could be. But something major does happen in this moment of silence. They show us a man who knows his computer and a woman who does not know her computer. This is a massive bit of evidence that this is Helena, because if this was Helly, they would have never focused on her fumbling around while Mr. Milchick just so casually accesses the muscle memory of where this power button is. She would have just clicked the button. Mark being in the background does leave it open for him to have noticed her fumble as well, should that 4D chess game really be happening. They do smile at each other. There's a little awkward moment here as he reflects, and then Dylan and Irving both enter. And if you listen, you can hear that the audio emphasizes them turning on their workstations, booting up in order at the switch of the power button without any amount of fumbling to be found, and Helly, or Helena, being the only one who isn't a part of the little team here turning their workstations on. They look at each other for a little bit, Mark really inspecting each of his friends with a disarming smile, and to me, this sells me on him not trusting one of them. I could be so off on this for a few reasons, but if Mark does know, it could allow him to continue this rage that we saw at the very beginning that would be just the most wild thing ever. Like, imagine he cracks it or is just waiting until he can, make his big move, and he literally takes Helena hostage. This was the impactful start of the first season, and then we finally get hit with a gold mine. We see Miss Casey in all of her beauty with an ID number, an iteration number, and much, much more. Let's start at the top and let's just get into it. IDNO likely relates to a database number that specifically designates who this is meant to be. Another eye-opening way to look at this is the Nazis tattooing Jews with their ID number. I believe IDNO is the ID number for this person, but ITNO is the iteration number of this same person. To me, this says build 25.00, which is the 25th build and a brand new build with no minor updates because the second half is 00. There are 26 letters in the English alphabet, so the theory that each person might have 26 iterations of themselves is still at play here, though I don't really want to focus on that too much. Even if it's not that, it's telling us that Miss Casey has been through some refining process 25 times, and we really need to figure out what they are testing for. It feels like they're trying to perfectly recreate her for what she was when she was alive, but I don't know. Hold that thought for a little bit. We see her ID number repeated, her heart rate showing us that her body is alive and pumping blood through her body. RFSP could relate to a radio frequency spectrum. If the implants do operate over radio wave, which could be the case, we don't know, this could show the radio channel where she is operating on. I'm not sure if that's important at all. Her temperature appears to be perfect, and then we get this little section here. Ben Stiller, childhood role model for his work in Dodgeball and current BFF, has not texted me about what this means, though, I'm waiting. I will have to get back to y'all about that, but to me, I'm reading this as a map of some kind, a topology that could have other layers because of the UI choice here that shows how evenly the tempers are being sorted for Miss Casey. It seems like the goal is taming the tempers for Miss Casey, which isn't very enter the cave of your own mind and tame the tempers world appendage kind of thing, but that's my best guess right now. I think the rings here are a purposeful choice, much like the rings that we've seen all episode. The O's here represent each container, and we've seen that before as well. The percentage aligns with Mark's progress, but I wonder if this is the collective percentage of the MDR team, or if it is just him. I'm leaning toward it being just him, but also the season and quarter just started and they're already at 68%. It's kind of displayed to us as though this was a new file because last season we saw the end of Tumwater or something, and yeah, so what is this progress? Who's working on this progress? How is it already 68%? Also, why did they not go 69 so that, all the comments could say nice? Say it anyway. Truly, I think it is just Mark's progress, and I really cannot explain why there is already so much progress made on this file. Last season, we saw Dylan finish a file and was waiting for PD to sign off on it when he vanished. It feels like they could all have their own files, and I wonder if Dylan did at one point also have a Gretchen and he is working on that file. Like, hear me out. I really think this is it. The history lives within us. The remembered man does not decay. The task is to create people they knew so that Lumon can bring back Kier Eagan one day. Imagine if Helly's task is to bring back her grandfather, who then can perform the same task on his loved ones, all the way down the family tree to Kier Eagan. This might just be an afterlife. Whatever it is, it's immortality. It's interesting immortality because the philosophy is not that of the individual's perception of themselves and their individual shared experiences and what they got from individual moments that ultimately led to them being them, but how their loved ones perceived them. But I think that is a story for another time, seasons away, should that actually be the plot that we are unraveling here. I think that Mark's dialogue here...
My wife was allergic to nutmeg. My wife liked other people's dogs. My wife thought cardigans looked ridiculous.
Shows us an intimate knowledge of this person. He not only knew her positive thoughts on the world, but her negative ones as well. He knew what she thought, what she liked, what she was allergic to, and through sorting through whatever these numbers are, they are trying to approximate Miss Casey and Gemma. This is build number 25 of this ID'd person that they wish to recreate, and the details in the bottom right here mean little to me in comparison to all of that. It's simply showing us more things that indicate a networked system that would track packets and keep alive time. I really feel like I just cracked the mystery wide open, if I can be so real. She is literally the numbers that he is sorting and her memories and what made her her, and they focus on his eyes to show that it is his detailed perception of her that is bringing her back to life.
She was just still in your veins,
He is literally the reason that she is down here, and I have little doubt that all of these people have terrible backstories because it was the thing that got them hired. Lumon wants you to have people in your veins. I don't believe Gretchen is alive. I believe that we could see Gretchen, but she will be another dead body fresh out of cold storage. Dylan will have no clue if she acts right or not, and that's the thing that will make me most curious here. Miss Cobel's continued observation of Mark and Miss Casey seems like she was doing a little bit more work than the board wanted her to do, but maybe that also got her a promotion instead of being fired. Like, she understood the bigger picture. I am entirely going on a tangent here, but let's also go back to Dylan having these 2 children. Good news, he probably will see 3 children during his visit with his dead wife. Bad news, 2 of those children are probably also dead. As a final note, Irving is likely working on his father. The Macrodata refinement process likely relates to family data, like its lineage, its legacy, its macro. Lumon has a divine process unfolding here as they are trying to put the halo back over Kier Eagan's head. But with that, we come to the end of the video. Wow. What an episode, and what a great way to finish that video. I was lagging behind a little bit there, trying to wrap my head around the thoughts and theories for this new episode, but I am kind of convinced now, and I will be looking for everything relating to those theories going into the rest of this season. It will be interesting to see what aligns and what doesn't. I imagine that they will hint more about this, but then create some tension that makes me anxious and kind of pushes us in a different direction. I fully believe that Dylan will see his wife and children, and it won't be until the end of the season where it's revealed that they are actually dead, and he is subjecting other versions of his late wife and children to this weird sub-Lumon existence until the fit hits the shan. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if I have missed anything that you wanted to talk about. I'm looking at the page count here, and I know that this is going to be a long video. Thank you for sticking around. If you want to support this content and me rambling about shows and my ideas and thoughts and how things could be cool, please consider joining as a member here on YouTube. We officially have one member, thanks friend, or joining the Patreon, or simply leaving a comment and telling me how wrong I am about everything that I just said. Any press is good press, especially to the algorithm that is the YouTube god, who will ultimately decide if this video trends or not. But much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.